Hi everyone. Today we're going to talk about Moses some more. Moses is back and he's going to tell us a story about manna, quail, and water. So first we need to figure out what some of these words mean. Do you know what manna is? Manna is another word for bread. And does anyone know what a quail is? Well, a quail is a kind of a bird. It's kind of like a pigeon, sort of. I'm going to show you a picture in my story. So we're going to get started, right, Moses? Yes, we're getting started. So this is the story of manna, quail, and water. And this story is found in Exodus. It's in Exodus chapter 16, verses 1 through 18, and chapter 17, verses 1 through 7. So I'm going to read the abbreviated version, and then I'm going to read some sections out of the Bible, and then we're going to have a quick discussion, and I'm going to ask you to do some activities at home. So God loved the Israelites. Remember the Israelites? We've talked about that. Those are the people who were in Israel, and they had to make a trek. So God loved the Israelites and their leader. Their leader was Moses. God promised to bring the people to a place where they could build homes and live happily. They had never lived outside of Egypt, and they were afraid. But God went with them, and as they walked long and far to the place God promised, traveling was really hard and tiring. And along the way, the people became hungry. Have you ever been hangry? It's like you're hungry and angry at the same time. You're hangry. I think they were hangry. So they complained to Moses. "I'm hungry," one boy cried. "I wish we could go back to Egypt," whined a little girl. "At least we had food to eat there." Her stomach growled. The people missed their dinners of meat and bread. The Israelites didn't know that God heard them complaining. That evening, something strange happened. Tiny birds called quails appeared everywhere. God had sent the quails so the people could eat meat. The next morning, the ground glistened with fresh dew. Even after the sun dried up the dew, there was still something covering the ground. It looked like bread had rained down from heaven. It was manna. Have you ever heard the saying, it's like manna from heaven? It's like raining something from the sky. The manna looked like tiny seeds and tasted like bread. The people ate and ate. And every day God sent manna and quail so the people had food to eat. The Israelites kept traveling toward the place God promised. After a while, they ran out of water. Even though God had given them food when they were hungry, the people still complained. "My mouth feels dry, like a desert," sobbed a child. The people were thirsty. This time, God told Moses to hit a rock with his staff. Do you know what a staff is? It's like a cane. It's like that. And sometimes it has a little crook at the top. It hooks over. When he did, water gushed out of the rock. The people had more than enough to drink. God gave food and water to the Israelites every day. God took care of the people just like God had promised. This has been a theme that we've talked about in many of our lessons. We talk about God's promises and that God keeps his promises. And we've also talked about how God listens even when we don't think he is listening. So like I said, if you go to your Bible and we talk about it, it's in Bread from Heaven is what the title is for Exodus 16. And that was when the whole congregation of the Israelites, they actually set out from a place called Elim. And Israel came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai. And the whole congregation kept complaining against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And they kept saying, if we had only died at the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt. It was an, oh, woe is me. It would have been better before. Have you ever heard your parents say, well, in my day, or sometimes when we look back and we say, well, it was better before this or that. That's kind of what they were doing. They were just finding ways to complain. And it's because they were hungry. And it wasn't so much that they were hungry, but I think they were scared too. Because sometimes when you don't know what's going to happen, you complain. It's kind of like a defense mechanism. So The Lord said to Moses, I am going to rain bread from heaven for you, and each day the people shall go out and gather enough for the day. And in that way I will test them, whether they will follow my instructions or not. And on the sixth day, when they prepare what they bring in, it will be twice as much as they gather on other days. And do you know why that is? Because on the seventh day we rest, so you wouldn't be gathering on the seventh day. So Moses and Aaron said to all the Israelites, in the evening you shall know that it was the Lord who brought you out of the land of Egypt, and in the morning you shall see the glory of the Lord, because he heard you complaining. For what are we that you complain against us? And Moses said, when the Lord gives you meat to eat in the evening, and your fill of bread in the morning, because the Lord has heard the complaining that you utter against him, what are we? Your complaining is not against us, but against the Lord. Because they were complaining, but it was against what the Lord was having them do, which was to travel. So they asked all the congregation to draw near to the Lord, because he heard their complaining. And then they looked towards the wilderness. And then the glory of the Lord appeared in a cloud. And in the evening, sure enough, the quails came up and covered the camp. And in the morning, there was the layer of dew around the camp, which dried up and turned into what looked like little balls of bread. And when they saw it, the Israelites said to each other, what is it? Because they didn't know what it was. And Moses said to them, it's the bread that the Lord has given you to eat. This is what the Lord has commanded. Gather as much of it as you need. And so the Israelites did. Some gathered more, some gathered less. But when they measured it, those who had gathered much had nothing over, and those who gathered little had no shortage. No matter how much you gathered, you had just enough. That's what God gave them, was just enough. So the Israelites gathered and ate, and Moses said to them, let no one leave any of it over until morning. But they did not listen to Moses. Some left part of it until morning, and it bred worms and became foul. That means it got kind of stinky. It went bad. So morning by morning they gathered it as much as each needed, but when the sun grew hot, it melted. It just went away. And on the sixth day, they gathered twice as much food. And when all the leaders of the congregation came and told Moses, he said to them, this is what the Lord commanded. Tomorrow is the day of solemn rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. Bake what you want to bake and boil what you want to boil, and all that is left over put aside to be kept until morning. So they put it aside until morning, as Moses commanded them. And it did not become foul, and there were no worms in it. Moses said, eat it today, for today is the Sabbath of the Lord. So that is why he told them to gather twice as much. And then in chapter 17, they talk about the rock, because they kept walking and they got really thirsty. They said, we can't walk anymore. We need water. And that's when God said to Moses, get your staff and go over to that rock and give it a really hard whack. And he did. And the water poured out of the rock. And they had more than enough to drink. Have you ever gone on a trip with your parents and you first get in the car and the first thing you do is, oh, are we there yet? How much longer? When are we going to be there? I'm thirsty. I'm hungry. Can we stop and get something to eat? I need to go to the bathroom. So have you ever been with someone who just complains? Or have you ever been the complainer? Or do you know anyone who wants something, but they want it right now, right away, and all for themselves? They can't wait. Sometimes we have to have patience, and sometimes we have to have faith. For instance, when your parents are taking you on a trip, don't you have faith that you're going to get there safely and that you'll get there in the right amount of time? And when you get there, that you'll have a really good time? So when we go places and we do things, we go on a little bit of faith, just like the poor Israelites had to do. And when they were complaining that they were hungry and that they were thirsty, God met their needs. They were probably thinking about foods that they wanted instead of foods that they needed. So I'm going to talk about wants and needs, because that's something else. So I know that we're going to get into the Christmas season soon, and you get to ask Santa for things that you want. And sometimes maybe your list includes something you need. For instance, it snowed yesterday. And so with snow, you need boots. So maybe people need new boots. So let's do a must-have list and a helps list. So things that I said that we must have are things like food and clothes and water and housing or shelter and money. Sometimes you have to have money because you have to pay bills to live. Things that help, especially in these days, are like a computer, maybe food I like instead of just food, books, a car, a phone. The computer helps because since we're remote learning, a lot of times in order to do your work, you have to have access to a computer. But is it a necessity? No. So necessities are things that if we don't have them, we can't live. So for instance, if I say list out foods you would like, some people may put down things like hamburgers or candy or cake. Well, really, the food that you need food that's nutritious. You need things like some dairy, like some milk or things like that, or maybe some juice, and you need meat or vegetables. So it may not be the ice cream or the chocolate cake, but it may be something more healthy. And it may not be like French fries as a potato, but maybe an actual potato. Because people like all different kinds of foods. And some people don't like, certain foods at all. I know people who don't like to eat meat. I know people who can't eat dairy. So what is necessary for one person isn't necessary for the other. So another thing that in this lesson, the Israelites, they were all giving their opinion. They were all saying, oh, why on earth, did we have to leave? We would have been so much better off just staying where we were. As bad as it was in Egypt, at least we had food. Well, that's probably not the right attitude because where they were going was much better. But where they were going was a little harder to get to, and it took some effort and it took strength to get there. So as much as they're complaining, was annoying, it was something that they just whined and whined. They didn't, they didn't give up. And thankfully, Moses was very, very patient. So if we had to do a poll with the Israelites at the end, here's my question. Do you think they would agree or disagree? So it's an election season, and probably you've heard on the news your parents talking about polls. Like, this candidate will probably win projected by the polls. They have this many percentage points of people who like them. So if we were to do a poll of the Israelites, let's see what you think your answer would be. So let's give a poll to them, and it's either they agree or they disagree. So let's say you're an Israelite, and I asked you, life in the desert is better than living in Egypt. Based on the story I've told you, do you think they would agree or disagree? I think they would disagree. I think living in the desert at this moment, they're not very happy because they can't see the end. It's just like when you're on your way and you're on a long drive. Let's say that we were going from here, from Massachusetts, all the way to Disney World. That's a super long drive. So it would take a really long time. Is the drive fun? Probably not, especially if you have a lot of people stuffed in the car and you're hungry and you need to go to the bathroom and you want to stretch because your legs are all cramped up. So it's not very fun, but is getting to Disney World fun? I'd say that's pretty fun. So I don't think that they think that life in the desert is better than Egypt. So would you think that the Israelites would say they are hungry? I agree. They are hungry. And that's part of why they don't think living in the desert is as good. Do you think that they are thirsty? Yes, they are thirsty. And do you think that they would agree or disagree that God makes sure I have enough food to eat? I think they would agree. He gave them quail, which are the birds that flew down and covered the land. And he gave manna, which looked like little balls. I'd say they look like little balls of hail that are just covering the earth. God makes sure I have fresh water to drink. I think you can agree there, because remember in Exodus chapter 17, Moses tapped the rock and the water poured out. Do you think that they would agree or disagree that I only gather enough food for what I need? Well, as we saw from the story, you can disagree on that, because some of them overgathered, and when that happened, that he said it won't stay, it'll spoil overnight, it would go bad. Have you ever put something in the fridge, like milk, and then one morning you woke up and you smelled it and you're like, oh, that's a bad smell. Things go bad. Bread can go bad that you bake or that you buy from the store. It can get little mold spots on it. Things go bad. They don't keep forever. So I think that they would disagree. They didn't gather just what they needed because they kind of hoarded. They were worried they wouldn't get food again. And you can see how that happens. Sometimes when you don't have things, you get way too much. Would the Israelites agree or disagree that Moses is a good leader? Well, this one's hard because I think he was a good leader. And I think that at the end of the journey, they would say he's a great leader. But I think at the beginning, when they were hungry and thirsty, they didn't think so. But probably halfway through. So I guess it's when you took the poll. If you took it towards the beginning, they'd say, no, this is terrible. If you took it at the end, they'd say, Moses was pretty awesome. We liked him a lot. So the last question I have for my Israelite poll to you Israelites. God listens when we ask for what we need. I say the Israelites agree because they didn't starve in the desert, they didn't die of thirst in the desert, and they made their passage through safely. So, good job, Israelites. You all did a good job on your poll. So, if you look on the website, there are some activities. There's a maze activity for the olders. I'd say probably 3rd grade and up. For 2nd grade and below, I have an activity where it's a connect the dots. And then my project activity for all of you is to make a bird feeder out of a plastic bottle. You could use either a small plastic bottle, like a water bottle, or like a 2-liter bottle of some kind, or you could use like the Poland Springs plastic bottle. All the instructions are in there. It's a really neat activity. You do need parent help because there is some punching of little holes or drilling little holes. It's not hard, but it's a good way to physically see how birds take what they need. So you'll be making a homemade bird feeder. And if you make one and you want to send me a picture or send me a video of you doing this, I would love to see it. Send it to ce@pilgrimsherburne.org and I will post pictures. But I hope you enjoyed your lesson about manna from heaven. So when you hear somebody say it's raining manna from heaven, you'll know what it is. It's little balls of bread. And Moses and I appreciate you coming for today's lesson. Goodbye. Thank you for coming.